He didn't call her name, didn't shout, didn't move. The Mafia Boss just froze over her forgotten diary, eyes locked on the last line like it detonated something. And now she has to walk back into the club knowing he knows the one thing she swore she'd die with. But she thought no one noticed her. A bartender in a mafia-owned nightclub, invisible behind the bar, drowning in debt and grief. The moment she stepped into the Obsidian Club, swallowed by black marble and polished steel, she believed she could disappear forever. Until the night her own words made the most dangerous man in Chicago stop cold. Saturday nights at the Obsidian Club always carried a particular weight. I could feel it the moment I pulled my dark hair into a tight ponytail and slipped into the staff entrance on Wabash Avenue. The club occupied a converted industrial building in Chicago's River North district, all black marble and polished steel, with chandeliers that caught the light like frozen tears. The kind of place where silence itself felt expensive. 8 months. That's how long I'd been pouring drinks and perfecting the art of disappearing. 8 months of moving through a world where a single bottle of bourbon could cost more than my monthly rent. 8 months of becoming invisible. Just another piece of elegant machinery that kept places like this running without friction. The guests never really looked at bartenders. Not properly. We were functional, like the crystal glassware or the ice machine humming steadily in the back. I preferred it that way. "You're doing that thing again," Evan Brooks said, appearing beside me with an empty tray balanced expertly on one hand. His blonde hair was styled with the kind of effortless precision that took real effort, and his smile was the practiced warmth of someone who'd worked hospitality long enough to make it look genuine. Evan had been at the Obsidian for 3 years and knew every regular by name, every preference, every unspoken rule. "What thing?" I grabbed a bottle of Macallan 18 from the top shelf without looking, pouring a precise 2-ounce measure into a tumbler with a single large ice cube. "That faraway look," he said, grinning. "Like you're writing a novel in your head instead of making old fashions." I wasn't writing a novel. I was writing something far more dangerous. What I didn't know was that the leather-bound diary sitting in my locker, filled with observations about the men who ran this place, was about to become the most dangerous thing I'd ever written. My leather-bound diary sat in my locker in the staff room, and every night after my shift, I filled its pages with observations. The way Cole Maddox moved through the club like he owned not just the building, but the air inside it. The way his underboss, Damon Reyes, watched people with the cold assessment of someone calculating vulnerabilities. The whispered conversations that stopped when I approached. The deliveries that came through the back entrance at 3 a.m. I wrote it all down. Not because I planned to do anything with it, but because writing was the only thing that made me feel like Lucas was still listening. 2 Manhattans, 1 Negroni, and a glass of Chateau Margaux, I recited, already reaching for the vermouth. My hands moved through the familiar motions while my mind drifted to the place it always did during these shifts. Back to the hospital room, back to the monitors, back to the moment everything ended. Evan leaned against the bar, his expression shifting from casual to concerned. "How are you doing? Really?" "Same as always." He didn't push, which was what I appreciated about Evan. He and his husband Michael had invited me to dinner 4 times. I'd declined every time, inventing transparent excuses we both pretended to believe. The truth was simpler and more brutal than any lie. I couldn't afford the luxury of friendship. Every dollar, every shift, every exhausting hour went toward the same crushing goal: $47,000. Medical debt from Lucas's treatment. The aggressive leukemia that had torn through my older brother for 8 brutal months before finally taking him. Sometimes I could still smell the antiseptic. Could still hear the steady beep of monitors that had eventually flatlined into a sound that lived in my nightmares. The state had cleared the debt legally after his death, but the collections agency that had bought it didn't care about legal technicalities. They called twice a week, sent letters, threatened my credit, my future, everything I had left. So I worked, and I wrote, and I watched. The club filled as the night deepened. Jazz played through invisible speakers, something sultry and sad that made the wealthy couples sway closer together in the dim corners. I mixed drinks on autopilot, my hands steady even as my mind wandered through memories I couldn't escape. Lucas had been 28 when he died. 2 years older than me, with the same dark hair and stubborn chin. He'd been the responsible one, the one who'd worked 2 jobs to help me through community college, the one who'd believed things would get better if we just kept trying. He'd been wrong. The cancer had appeared suddenly, viciously. One day he was fine. The next he was in the ER with a white blood cell count that made the doctors' faces go pale. Stage 4. Aggressive. The kind that didn't negotiate. We'd fought anyway. Every treatment, every trial, every last desperate option. I'd taken out loans I couldn't afford, maxed out credit cards, worked doubles and triples until I couldn't remember what sleeping felt like. It hadn't been enough. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Lucas's death hadn't been about cancer at all. Sophia. The voice cut through the ambient noise of the club like a blade through silk. I looked up. Grant Whitaker stood at the end of the bar, his silver hair immaculate, his expression unreadable. The club manager rarely came down to the floor during operating hours unless something was wrong. Behind him, the VIP elevator doors stood open, spilling golden light into the dim main floor. "Mr. Maddox needs a bottle sent upstairs," Grant said quietly. "Pappy Van Winkle, 23 year. The one in the locked cabinet." My stomach dropped. The upstairs VIP rooms were restricted. Staff didn't go up there unless explicitly summoned, and even then, only senior personnel made deliveries. I'd been working here 8 months and had never once been called to the second floor. "Now, Sophia." I nodded, throat tight, and moved toward the locked liquor cabinet. My hands shook slightly as I retrieved the bottle. Amber liquid worth more than 6 months of my salary. I wiped the glass with a clean cloth, set it on a silver tray with 2 crystal tumblers, and walked toward the elevator. Evan caught my eye as I passed. His expression asked the question he wouldn't voice aloud. "Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The elevator doors closed behind me, and the world narrowed to polished brass and my reflections staring back at me from every surface. The woman looking back was a stranger. Exhausted eyes, hollow cheeks, dark hair pulled back so tightly it made my scalp ache. I looked like someone barely holding on, because I was. The elevator climbed with excruciating slowness. I counted my breaths, tried to steady my pulse, reminded myself that I was invisible, that men like Cole Maddox didn't see people like me. But something cold had settled in my stomach. Some instinct that whispered I shouldn't go up there, that whatever waited on the second floor would change everything. I should have listened. What I saw in that room would shatter everything I thought I knew, and link my brother's death to the man standing 3 feet away from me. The elevator opened on the second floor, and the air itself felt different. Thicker, more dangerous. The hallway stretched ahead, lit by sconces that cast long shadows on burgundy walls. At the end, a door stood slightly ajar, spilling warm light and the low murmur of voices. I forced myself to breathe, to walk, to become invisible again. But when I stepped through that door, everything I thought I knew shattered. The room was smaller than I expected. Intimate. A round table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. The lighting was low, amber, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. 3 men sat at the table. Cole Maddox occupied the chair facing the door. He was younger than I'd imagined up close. Mid-30s, maybe, with dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture. Sharp jaw, intense eyes. The kind of presence that made the air around him feel charged. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like it had been made specifically for his body. The jacket opened to reveal a burgundy shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment, our eyes met. I felt it like a physical impact. The weight of his attention, the assessment, the flicker of something I couldn't name. Then his gaze moved past me, dismissing me as quickly as he'd noticed me. Damon Reyes sat to his right. Cole's underboss was a different kind of dangerous, compact, controlled, with slicked-back dark hair and a face that never seemed to move. He watched me enter with the cold evaluation of a predator, determining whether something was prey or simply irrelevant. The third man was tied to a chair. His face was a mess of blood and bruises. His shirt, once white, was torn and stained. His hands were bound behind him, and his chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Blood dripped from his chin onto the expensive carpet below, and no one seemed to care about the stains spreading like a dark bloom. I froze. "Set it down," Damon said without looking at me. His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of someone issuing instructions to furniture. I forced my legs to move, crossed the room, set the tray on the table with hands that trembled so badly the crystal glasses chimed against the silver. "Thank you, Sophia." Cole's voice was different from Damon's. Warmer, almost, though warmth in a room like this felt like a lie. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon into one of the glasses, the liquid catching the light like liquid gold. I should have left, should have turned and walked out before I saw anything else. But I couldn't stop staring at the third man. His head hung forward, dark hair matted with blood. But when he shifted, just slightly, I saw it. The scar. The moment I recognized that thin white line running from his jaw to his ear. My brother's unsolved murder suddenly had a face. A thin white line that ran from his jaw to his ear, barely visible under the blood, but unmistakable once you noticed it. The kind of scar that came from a knife fight, not an accident. The kind that marked someone who'd survived violence before. My breath caught. I knew that scar. "Riley," Damon said quietly, addressing the bound man. "We can do this all night. Or you can tell me where you sent the money." Riley lifted his head slightly. His eyes were swollen, but through the blood and bruises I could see desperation. Fear. The look of someone who knew he was going to die and was bargaining for minutes, not mercy. "I told you," Riley rasped. "I didn't take anything." Wrong answer. Damon's tone didn't change. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small and silver. A lighter. My stomach turned. "Sophia." Damon's voice was sharp now, impatient. I blinked, refocusing. "Yes, sorry. Is there anything else?" "No." I turned toward the door, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought they might crack. "Actually..." Cole's voice stopped me. I turned back slowly. He was watching me now, really watching me, in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. "You've been working here how long?" he asked. 8 months, Mr. Maddox. "And you're Evan Brooks's friend?" "We work together, yes." His eyes held mine for another beat, and I felt like he was reading something in my face I didn't want him to see. Calculating, measuring, deciding something I didn't understand. Then he nodded, a small gesture that felt like dismissal and evaluation all at once. "Thank you, Sophia, that's all." I left. The hallway felt endless. The elevator took a lifetime. By the time I reached the staff room, My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open my locker. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. The photo was still there, saved 8 months ago, forwarded by a detective who'd told me there was nothing more he could do. A grainy security image from the alley behind a warehouse on the south side. The alley where Lucas had been found, slumped against a dumpster, his phone still in his hand, his eyes open but seeing nothing. In the image, 2 figures stood in shadow. One was my brother. I'd recognize his silhouette anywhere, the way he stood with his weight on his left leg because of an old basketball injury. The other was partially obscured, face turned away from the camera, but visible enough to make out certain features. The scar along his jaw. The same scar I'd just seen upstairs. If you're feeling the weight of this moment, the injustice of a system that let Lucas's killer walk free while Sophia drowned in debt for trying to save him, subscribe. Because Damon Reyes represents everything broken about power protecting power. And you're about to see if one bartender's diary can bring down an empire. The man tied to that chair, bloodied, beaten, barely conscious, begging for his life, was the same man who'd been in the alley the night Lucas died. Which meant Damon Reyes knew exactly what had happened. Which meant Damon Reyes knew who killed my brother. Or worse, Damon had ordered it. My vision blurred. The phone slipped from my hands, clattering onto the bench. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to breathe through the sudden crushing weight on my chest. 8 months. 8 months of working in this place, serving drinks to the men who'd taken everything from me. 8 months of smiling and nodding and pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. Lucas had known something. Had discovered something that got him killed. And now I knew what it was. What I didn't realize was that I was about to make the worst mistake of my life, and it would take less than an hour. I pulled out my diary with shaking hands and started writing. I wrote until my hand cramped. Every detail, every observation. The room, the lighting, the way Damon had stood over Riley Cortez like violence was a language he spoke fluently. The scar, the photo, the timeline. The way Cole had watched me, as if he'd seen something in my face that made him pause. I wrote about Lucas, about the phone call he'd made 3 days before he died. The one where he'd told me he'd stumbled onto something at work. Something big. Something dangerous. He'd worked as a low-level accountant for Midwest Logistics, a company that I now knew was a front for mafia operations. Shipping containers that were never inspected, deliveries that happened at midnight, numbers that didn't add up. "I think someone's stealing," Lucas had said on that call, his voice low like he was afraid of being overheard. A lot. Millions, maybe. I found discrepancies in the routing accounts. Money being moved offshore through shell companies. "What are you going to do?" I'd asked. "I'm going to tell someone," he'd said. "Someone I trust. Someone who can help." 3 days later, he was dead. The police had ruled it a mugging gone wrong. No witnesses, no suspects. A young man in the wrong place at the wrong time. The detective assigned to the case, an overworked man named Morrison who'd looked at me with practiced sympathy, had told me these things happened in that part of the city. That sometimes there were no answers. But I'd known. Even without proof, I'd known Lucas hadn't been killed for his wallet or his phone. He'd been killed because he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Because he'd trusted the wrong person. And now I had proof. Riley Cortez had been there. And if Riley had been there, working for Damon, then Damon knew exactly why my brother had died. My pen moved faster, the words pouring out in a stream of grief and rage and terrible clarifying certainty. I wrote about the way Damon had looked at Riley, not with anger, but with cold calculation. The way someone looked at a problem that needed to be eliminated. I wrote about Cole, too, about the way he'd moved through the club for 8 months, watching everything, controlling everything, about the power that radiated from him like heat from a flame. about the moment our eyes had met in that room upstairs, and I'd felt something shift. Recognition, maybe, or warning. I reached the last page. My hand hesitated over the paper. Then I wrote the final line, the one that would change everything. Damon Reyes killed my brother. I stared at the words until they blurred. The truth. Finally written down. Finally real. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me like ice water. I shoved the diary into my bag, grabbed my jacket, and bolted for the exit. The rain hit me the moment I stepped outside. Cold, brutal, soaking through my clothes in seconds. November in Chicago was unforgiving, and tonight the wind cut through the streets like knives. I ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until I reached the L station 3 blocks away. My lungs burned, my clothes clung to my skin. My mind raced with images I couldn't unsee. What I didn't realize until it was too late. The diary that held all my secrets was still sitting in my locker, and by morning it would be in the hands of the one man who could either save me or destroy me. It wasn't until I was on the train, shivering and breathless, watching the city lights blur past the rain-streaked windows, that I realized. My bag felt too light. I opened it with trembling hands, already knowing what I'd find. Wallet, phone, keys, no diary. No diary. I'd left it in my locker. The realization hit like a physical blow. I'd written down everything. Names, dates, observations, accusations. I'd written down that Damon Reyes had killed my brother, and I'd left it sitting in an unlocked locker in a building owned by the Mafia. I was dead. The thought was clinical, factual. Men like Damon Reyes didn't leave loose ends. If he found that diary, if he read what I'd written, he wouldn't hesitate. He wouldn't ask questions. He'd simply make me disappear, the way he'd made Lucas disappear. And no one would look for me. No one would care. I was just a bartender, invisible, replaceable. The train carried me home through the dark city, and I sat frozen in my seat, watching my reflection in the window and wondering if I'd just written my own death sentence. I didn't sleep. I lay in my studio apartment staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer against the window, replaying every moment of the night. The diary was still at the club, in my locker, with my name written on the inside cover in Lucas's handwriting. A birthday gift from 2 years ago, back when we'd both believed we had time. If anyone found it, if anyone read it, if Damon found it, I was dead. The thought repeated like a mantra. Clinical, factual, inevitable. Men like Damon Reyes didn't leave loose ends. I'd watched him for 8 months, observed the way he operated. Efficient, methodical, ruthless. He eliminated problems before they became threats. And I'd just become a problem. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I would go back. Early, before the day staff arrived. I'd retrieve the diary, quit my job, and disappear. Chicago was a big city. I could find work somewhere else. Somewhere far from the Obsidian Club and the men who ran it. Maybe leave the city entirely. Indiana was close. Or Wisconsin. Somewhere anonymous where no one knew my name or my brother's name or anything about the debt that had been crushing me for 2 years. The debt didn't matter anymore. Survival did. But while I was planning my escape, Grant Whitaker was already reading the last page of my diary and making a decision that would change everything. I dressed in the dark, black jeans, leather jacket, boots, armor. I pulled my hair back, checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked like someone preparing for war, or a funeral. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick, reflecting neon and streetlights in fractured patterns. The club wouldn't open for hours. Most of the staff wouldn't arrive until noon. The cleaning crew came at 8, but they never went into the staff areas. I had a window. The staff entrance would be locked, but I had a key. All employees did, for early shifts and late nights. My hands shook as I inserted it into the lock. The click seemed impossibly loud in the quiet morning. I used it. The building was silent. Empty. The main floor looked different without people. Sterile, cold, like a stage set waiting for actors. The chandeliers hung dark and motionless. The bar was clean, bottles lined up with military precision. Everything in its place. I moved quickly toward the staff hallway, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears, feel it in my throat. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound made me jump. My locker was exactly as I'd left it. I spun the combination lock with shaking hands. Right, left, right. The mechanism clicked. The door swung open. Empty. The diary was gone. My legs went weak. I gripped the locker door to keep from collapsing. Gone. Someone had taken it. Someone had found it and taken it and read it and... Looking for this? The voice came from behind me. I spun, my back hitting the lockers with a metallic clang. Grant Whitaker stood in the doorway, my diary in his hands. His silver hair was perfectly styled even at this early hour. His expression was unreadable. Not angry, not sympathetic, just carefully blank. I found it during closing, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I was going to return it to you, but... He paused, his eyes dropping to the leather-bound book. I saw your name. And I thought I should make sure nothing inappropriate was inside. My throat closed. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. So I read it, Grant continued, each word landing like a hammer. And then I gave it to Mr. Maddox. The world tilted. The floor seemed to drop away beneath my feet. He read it last night, Grant said. All of it. Every word. Every observation. He paused. Every accusation. I couldn't breathe. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, edges going dark. He's been looking for you since 4 a.m., Grant added. His expression shifted slightly. Was that concern? Pity? So has Damon. They both know you know. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. You need to leave, Grant said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the back exit. Now, through the back. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere they'd expect. Don't use your credit cards. Don't call anyone you know. Why are you helping me? The words came out as a whisper. His expression softened, just for a moment, and I saw something genuine break through the professional mask. Because I had a brother too, he said quietly, and I know what it's like to want answers, to need answers. He paused. Mine died in Afghanistan. IED. I never found out who made it or why it was there, just that he was gone and I couldn't do anything about it. He held out the diary. I took it with shaking hands. Go, Grant said. Now. And don't come back. I ran. But what I didn't know was that Cole Maddox wasn't hunting me. He was racing to find me before Damon's men did. And he was already 3 blocks behind. I made it 3 blocks before I saw the car. Black SUV, tinted windows, engine running. It was parked at the corner of Wabash and Erie, and as I approached, it started moving slowly, matching my pace. My heart stopped. The driver's window rolled down, and I saw his face through the rain-streaked glass. Square jaw, scar through his eyebrow. I didn't know his name, but I'd seen him at the club, standing near Damon, following orders. One of Damon's men. I ducked into an alley, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, the screen glowing harsh in the dim morning light. No one to call. No one who could help. No one who wouldn't ask questions I couldn't answer. Evan would want to know why. Michael would try to help and get himself killed. The police would laugh. What proof did I have? A diary? Observations from a bartender? They'd send me home and forget about me within an hour. I was alone. The realization was cold and absolute, isolating. I'd spent 8 months keeping everyone at arm's length, refusing friendship, refusing help, refusing any connection that might make me vulnerable. Now I had no one. I kept moving, staying off main streets, cutting through alleys and side roads. The city was just waking up, coffee shops opening, commuters heading to the L, delivery trucks rumbling through empty streets. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that someone was being hunted 3 feet away from them. My mind raced. If Cole had read the diary, he knew what Damon had done. But that didn't mean he'd protect me. More likely, he'd see me as a liability. A witness who knew too much. A problem that needed to be eliminated just like Riley Cortez. I needed to get out of the city. Needed money. Needed a car. Needed to disappear before... Sophia. The voice stopped me cold. I turned slowly, every muscle tensing, ready to run. Cole Maddox stood at the end of the alley, hands in his pockets, rain darkening his hair. He wore a different suit than last night, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He was alone, no guards visible, no weapon I could see, just him. But that was enough. Men like Cole Maddox didn't need weapons to be dangerous. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice carrying easily through the morning air. "Stay away from me." My voice shook despite my best effort to sound strong. What Cole said next would force me to make the most dangerous decision of my life, and I had less than 30 seconds to choose. "Damon's men are 3 blocks from here," Cole said, taking a single step forward. Not threatening exactly, but deliberate. "They're canvassing the area, checking security cameras, asking questions." Another step. "If I found you, they will too. You have 2 choices. Come with me, or take your chances with them." "Why would you help me?" The question came out sharper than I intended, edged with all the fear and anger I'd been holding back. His jaw tightened. "Because I read your diary. All of it. Every observation. Every detail." He paused, his eyes holding mine. "And I believe you." I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. Believe me, Cole Maddox, one of the most powerful men in the city, a man who ran a criminal organization, a man who should have every reason to protect his underboss, believed me. "Your brother discovered Damon's been skimming money," Cole said, his voice low but clear. "Millions. Making unauthorized deals with the Sinaloa cartel out of Tijuana. Undermining operations I spent years building. Lucas found the proof in the routing accounts. He was a good accountant. Too good." His expression darkened. Damon killed him to keep it quiet. Made it look like a street crime. Random. Unsolvable. My vision blurred. Hearing it confirmed, hearing someone else say what I'd suspected for 8 months, hit harder than I expected. My legs felt weak. I pressed my hand against the alley wall to steady myself. "I've suspected for months," Cole continued, stepping closer. Close enough now that I could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. But I couldn't move against him without evidence, without a witness, without proof that would hold up in front of the council. Moving against a lieutenant without justification would split the organization, trigger a war. "So you want to use me?" The accusation came out flat, numb. "I want to protect you." His voice dropped lower, intense. "And I want justice. For your brother. For my organization. For every person Damon's betrayed, and every life he's destroyed, building his little empire inside mine. Behind me I heard voices. Footsteps. The SUV's engine getting closer. Cole's expression hardened. His hand moved to his jacket. Not threatening, but ready. Choose, Sophia. Now. Trust me. Or trust that you can outrun them. I looked into his eyes and saw something I didn't expect. Truth. Not manipulation. Not calculation. Just exhausted, determined truth. The look of someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had finally found someone who could help him carry it. Okay, I whispered. He grabbed my hand, his grip firm but careful, and pulled me toward a door I hadn't noticed before. Hidden in shadow, nearly invisible, metal painted the same dark color as the bricks surrounding it. Where? Tunnel system, he said, pushing it open with a key I didn't see him retrieve. Runs under half the city, Prohibition era. Most people don't know it exists anymore. This way. We descended into darkness, and the door closed behind us with a sound like a coffin ceiling. While we disappeared into the tunnels beneath Chicago, Damon was mobilizing every resource he had to find me. And what he planned to do when he did would make Riley Cortez's interrogation look merciful. The tunnels smelled like damp stone and old metal and something else I couldn't identify. Age, maybe, or the weight of secrets that had been kept underground for nearly a century. The only light came from Cole's phone, casting long shadows on brick walls that looked like they'd been here since the city was built. Water stains ran down the mortar. The ceiling was low enough that Cole had to duck slightly. Our footsteps echoed in the narrow space, multiplying until it sounded like we were being followed by ghosts. Stay close, he said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow still commanding. I didn't argue. I stayed so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive that shouldn't have been comforting but was. We moved quickly. Cole navigating the tunnels like he'd walked them 1,000 times. Maybe he had. At intersections, he barely paused, choosing directions with certainty. Left, then right, then straight through a section where the ceiling had partially collapsed and we had to climb over rubble. My breath came in shallow gasps. My mind couldn't stop replaying everything. Cole had my diary. He'd read it. He knew everything I'd observed, everything I'd suspected, everything I'd felt, including the parts where I'd written about him. The thought made my face burn even in the cold darkness. I'd written about the way he moved through the club with casual authority, the way people watched him, not with fear exactly, but with respect and wariness combined. The way his presence changed the air in a room. I'd written about his hands, strong, scarred across the knuckles, the hands of someone who'd built an empire and wasn't afraid to get them dirty. I'd written things I shouldn't have noticed, things I definitely shouldn't have recorded. How far does this go? I asked, partly to break the silence, partly because I needed to think about something other than what he'd read. Far enough. He glanced back at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Just shadows and angles and intensity. There's a safe house in Pilsen. Old factory building. 3 floors, reinforced doors, sightlines in every direction. We'll be secure there. And then what? Then we talk. He paused at an intersection of tunnels, checking his phone. Not for directions, I realized, but for messages. His expression hardened at whatever he saw. About what you saw. About what we do next. About how we take down Damon without burning down everything around him. We? He looked at me fully then, and I saw something in his eyes that made my pulse stutter. Determination. Certainty. Something else I couldn't name. You didn't ask to be part of this, he said quietly. But you are now, whether you want to be or not. And I don't leave people behind. Not when they're in danger, because they found the truth I've been searching for. Something in his voice, the certainty, the weight of responsibility, the hint of something personal, made me believe him. Made me want to believe him anyway, which might have been more dangerous. We climbed a ladder that led to a storm drain. Cole pushed open the heavy grate with one hand, the muscles in his arm flexing under his shirt. Then checked the street above with careful precision before gesturing for me to follow. I climbed up into gray morning light, blinking against the sudden brightness after the tunnel's darkness. The safe house was a narrow brick building wedged between a bodega with security grates and a laundromat with faded signs advertising wash and fold. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Perfect. The kind of building you'd walk past 1,000 times and never remember. Exactly the kind of place someone like Cole Maddox would choose. Inside, the space was sparse, but clean. Exposed brick walls, minimal furniture, blackout curtains covering every window. A kitchen in one corner with granite countertops that looked new. A living area with a leather couch and a coffee table scarred with old cigarette burns. Stairs leading up to what I assumed were bedrooms. Cole locked the door behind us with 3 separate deadbolts and engaged a security system I heard beeping somewhere in the walls. Then he finally turned to face me fully, and I saw how tired he looked. How tense. Like he'd been awake for days, running on nothing but will and coffee. "You're safe here," he said. "No one knows about this place except me and Adam." Adam? Head of security. Former Marine. The only person I trust completely. He moved to the kitchen, filled a kettle from the tap, set it on the stove with movements that were almost domestic. The normalcy of it felt surreal. A mafia boss making tea like we were old friends having a quiet morning together instead of fugitives hiding from a killer. "Tea?" he offered, then caught my expression and almost smiled. "Or I have bourbon. Decent bourbon. Not the cheap stuff. Bourbon." My voice came out rough, raw. Fair. What I told Cole in the next hour would give him the final piece he needed to take down Damon. But it would also make me the one witness who could never be allowed to survive. He poured 2 glasses from a bottle of Blanton's. Good bourbon, the kind I'd served countless times but never tasted, and handed me one. His fingers brushed mine for a moment, warm despite the cold we'd just walked through. We sat across from each other at the small dining table, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, 2 people brought together by violence and grief, and a diary I should never have written. Finally, Cole said, "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning, everything you saw, everything you know, everything that made you write what you wrote." So I did. I told him about Lucas, about the childhood we'd shared in a too-small apartment in Bridgeport, raised by a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs and still couldn't quite make ends meet. About how Lucas had been the responsible one, the one who'd kept me focused when I wanted to drop out of school, the one who'd helped me fill out college applications and driven me to community college every morning before his own shift started. I told him about the phone call 3 days before Lucas died, about the fear in my brother's voice, the way he'd whispered like he was afraid of being overheard, about how he'd said he'd found something at work, something big, something that was going to change everything. He wanted to do the right thing, I said, staring at the bourbon in my glass, watching the light catch in the amber liquid. That was always Lucas's problem. He believed in doing the right thing even when it was dangerous, even when it would cost him. Cole listened without interrupting, his expression intent, his eyes never leaving my face. He didn't take notes, didn't check his phone, just listened with the kind of complete attention that made me feel like every word mattered. When I got to the part about Lucas's death, about the call from the police at 3 a.m., about identifying his body at the morgue, about the detective who'd barely looked at the case before filing it as unsolved, my voice broke. They didn't care. I said. He was just another statistic. Another young man dead in the wrong part of town. They took photos and wrote a report, and then moved on to the next case. I'm sorry, Cole said quietly. And the thing was, he sounded like he meant it. I told him about the medical debt, about working at the Obsidian for 8 months, serving drinks to the men who'd taken everything from me and never knowing it, about the diary, about observing, about trying to find some pattern that would explain why my brother had been killed. And then tonight, last night I guess, I went upstairs, I said, and I saw Riley Cortez, and I knew. Cole was quiet for a long moment after I finished. He swirled the bourbon in his glass, watching the liquid move, his expression thoughtful. Then he said, Damon's been stealing from the organization for 2 years, maybe longer. Small amounts at first, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Amounts small enough that they'd get lost in the overall movement of money. Then he got bolder. Started moving larger sums. Started making deals without authorization. With the cartel, I said, remembering what he'd mentioned in the alley. With the Sinaloa cartel, specifically. A man named Hector Salazar, who runs operations out of Tijuana. Damon's been giving him territory access in exchange for cash payments and product movement rights. Undermining deals I spent years building with other organizations. Starting small wars I then have to put out. His jaw tightened. It's been destabilizing everything. Why haven't you stopped him? The question came out before I could stop it. Cole's expression darkened. Because I need proof, he said. Proof that would hold up in front of the Council of 12. It's not enough for me to suspect. Not enough for me to have instincts or concerns. I need evidence, documentation, testimony. He leaned forward slightly. In my world, you can't just eliminate a lieutenant because you think they're betraying you. That's how you start internal wars, how you fracture organizations, how you turn allies into enemies. I processed that. And my testimony would be proof. Your testimony, the surveillance photo, the timeline, everything you witnessed upstairs. He held my gaze. With that, the council would have no choice but to act, to investigate, to hold Damon accountable. And if they don't? His jaw tightened again, a muscle jumping near his ear. Then I handle it myself, and accept the consequences. What Cole wasn't telling me, the Council of 12 had their own secrets to protect, and some of them had been profiting from Damon's deals. My testimony wouldn't just expose one man. It would threaten an entire network. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't bravado or empty threat. This was a man who'd made a decision and would follow through no matter what it cost him. Why do you care? I asked. The question had been building in my chest since the alley. About justice? About my brother? About doing this the right way instead of just handling it? Cole was quiet for a long moment. He set down his glass, folded his hands on the table, and looked at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Then he said, I grew up in this world. My father ran the organization before me. I learned how to run operations before I learned how to drive. I've done things I'm not proud of, things that keep me awake at night, things I'll answer for eventually, in this life or the next. He paused. But I've always operated by a code. Loyalty matters. Honor matters. Rules matter. When someone breaks that, when someone betrays the people who trust them, when someone kills an innocent man to cover their crimes, they answer for it. Noble, I said, and couldn't quite keep the edge out of my voice. For a crime boss. He didn't flinch. I've never pretended to be something I'm not. But there's a difference between operating outside the law and having no code at all. Damon has no code, no loyalty, no honor. He cares about money and power and nothing else. Men like that are more dangerous than any rival organization. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But part of me, the part that had spent 8 months watching, observing, documenting, whispered warnings I couldn't quite ignore. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Your testimony." In front of the council. "When?" 3 days, maybe less. I need time to arrange it, to make sure it's secure, to make sure Damon can't interfere. My stomach dropped. 3 days. 3 days to prepare to sit in a room with 12 of the most powerful criminals in the city and accuse one of them of murder. "Can you do it?" he asked gently. I thought of Lucas, of the hospital room, of the calls from collectors, of 8 months of grief and rage with nowhere to go, of the diary I'd written because I needed to believe that truth mattered, that justice existed, that my brother's death meant something more than just another unsolved case. "Yes," I said. Relief crossed his face. Genuine relief. Like my answer had been important to him personally. "Then we prepare." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of preparation, fear, and something I couldn't quite name. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. Cole brought in Adam Rourke the first morning. The head of security arrived before dawn, letting himself in with keys that made no sound. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6 feet of compact muscle with a scar running from his left temple into his hairline. Eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. Former Marine, Cole had said. The kind of man who'd seen combat and carried it with him into civilian life. "Sophia," Adam said by way of greeting. Not hostile exactly, but evaluating. Taking my measure the way you'd size up a potential asset or liability. "Adam." He set a laptop on the dining table, opened it, and pulled up what looked like a floor plan. "The council meets in a warehouse on the south side. Old meatpacking district. Building's been renovated, but they keep the industrial aesthetic. High ceilings, concrete floors, minimal exits." He traced a path with his finger. "You'll enter here, with Cole. Security checkpoint here. You'll be searched, so don't bring anything that could be construed as a weapon. Not even a pen." My stomach tightened. "Searched?" "Standard protocol. The council doesn't take chances." He pulled up another document. A list of names with photos attached. 12 faces. 11 men. 1 woman. Some old, some young. All dangerous. "These are the council members. Franklin Daly runs the meeting. He's old school, believes in rules, protocol, evidence. He'll be your best ally." "And my worst enemy?" I asked. Adam's expression didn't change. "Marcus Torino. 3rd seat. He's been Damon's mentor. Brought him up through the ranks. If anyone's going to defend him, it's Marcus." What Adam didn't tell me. Marcus Torino had been taking a cut of Damon's stolen money for 18 months. And he'd do anything to keep that secret buried. I studied the faces, trying to memorize them. Trying to imagine standing in front of them and accusing one of their own of murder. "They'll question everything," Adam continued. "Your timeline, your memory, your motives. They'll try to rattle you, make you doubt yourself, make you seem unreliable." "How do I stop them?" "You don't." He closed the laptop and looked at me directly. "You stick to the facts. You stay calm. You don't let them see fear. And you remember that you're the only person in that room who has nothing to gain from lying." We rehearsed. Again and again. Adam firing questions at me like bullets. "Why were you upstairs that night?" "Grant Whitaker sent me. Mr. Maddox requested Pappy Van Winkle." "Why you specifically?" "I don't know. He didn't explain." "Could you have misidentified Riley Cortez?" "No. The scar is distinctive. And I've been looking at that surveillance photo for 8 months. I could draw his face from memory. Why should we believe you didn't fabricate this story for revenge?" Because I didn't know who killed my brother until 3 nights ago. Because I have no reason to lie. Because all I want is the truth. Over and over. Until the answers came automatically. Until I could recite the timeline in my sleep. Until Adam finally nodded and said, "Good. You're ready." But I didn't feel ready. At night, Cole and I sat at the table, going over details. He'd brought files, financial records, shipping manifests, communications logs, evidence he'd been gathering for months. "Tell me about the scar again," he said for the 10th time. Thin, white, runs from jaw to ear on the left side, visible even under the blood, like a knife wound, not surgical. Old but distinct. "And you're certain it matches the photo?" "Yes." He nodded, making notes in a leather-bound notebook that reminded me painfully of my diary. Sometimes, late at night when exhaustion made us both honest, the conversation shifted to places I didn't expect. "Why do you write everything down?" he asked once, setting aside the files and just looking at me across the table. The safe house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. 2 a.m., maybe. Or later. I looked up from my cold tea, surprised by the question. "Because if I don't, I'll forget," I said. And forgetting feels like losing him twice. Like he dies again every time a memory fades. Cole's expression softened in a way I'd rarely seen. "I understand that. Do you?" "I had a brother, too," he said quietly. "Younger. Marco. He died 10 years ago. Car accident on Lakeshore Drive. Black ice. He was 23. He paused, his fingers tightening around his glass. "I still see him sometimes. In crowds. In reflections. Someone with the same walk or the same laugh. And for a second, I forget." "Does it get easier?" The question came out smaller than I intended. More vulnerable. "No," he said honestly, and I appreciated the truth more than I would have appreciated comfort. "You just learn to carry it. Learn to live with the weight. Some days it's manageable. Some days it crushes you." He met my eyes. "But you keep going because they'd want you to. Because giving up would mean they died for nothing." The silence that followed felt intimate. Shared grief creating a connection I hadn't expected and wasn't sure I wanted. "I'm sorry about your brother," I said finally. "I'm sorry about yours." What neither of us knew. Damon had just learned exactly where we were hiding, and he was planning something that would force the council's hand before we ever reached that warehouse. On the 3rd day, Cole handed me something I hadn't expected to see again. My diary. "I thought you'd want it back," he said, setting it on the table between us like it was something precious. Or dangerous. Maybe both. I took it, the leather warm under my fingers, worn smooth from months of handling. Lucas's handwriting on the inside cover. "For Sophia, may you always find the words. Love, L." My throat tightened. "I read it," Cole admitted, as if I didn't already know. As if I hadn't spent 3 days acutely aware that he'd read every observation, every thought, every private moment I'd recorded. All of it. My face burned. "I know." "You're a good writer," he said softly. Not teasing, just honest. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond to a compliment about writing that included detailed observations of him, of the way he moved, of the way he commanded a room without saying a word. Observations that went beyond professional and into something I'd never meant anyone to see. "You wrote about me," he added, his voice careful. Testing. "I wrote about everyone." The defense came automatically. "Not like that." My heart hammered. I was observing, documenting, trying to understand the world I was working in. "You were seeing." He held my gaze. There's a difference between observing and seeing, between documenting and understanding. He paused. You saw things I didn't think anyone noticed. The air between us felt charged, dangerous, like standing too close to something that could burn. Cole? His phone buzzed, shattering the moment like glass. He checked it, and his expression hardened instantly, all softness vanishing like it had never existed. It's time, he said. The council convenes tomorrow night. My stomach dropped. Adams arranged secure transport. We leave at 7 p.m. The meeting starts at 8. He stood. All business now. Get some rest. Tomorrow changes everything. I wanted to ask what would happen if things went wrong. Wanted to ask if he was scared. Wanted to ask a dozen questions that had no good answers. Instead, I just nodded. That night I barely slept. I lay in the small bedroom upstairs, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city through the blackout curtains. Cars passing, sirens in the distance, the buildings settling. Normal sounds from a normal world I was no longer part of. I thought about Lucas, about the last conversation we'd had, 3 days before he died. He'd called from work, voice tight with stress. I need to tell you something, he'd said. But not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Of course. What's wrong? I can't explain yet. But Sophia, if something happens, nothing's going to happen. If something happens, he'd repeated, I need you to know I didn't do anything wrong. I found something. Something big. And I'm going to make sure the right people know about it. Lucas, you're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just promise me you'll be careful. That you'll trust your instincts. That you won't let them make you think you're crazy or paranoid. Them who? I have to go. I love you, Sophia. Those were the last words he ever said to me. I love you, Sophia. 3 days later, he was dead in an alley with his phone still in his hand and a bullet in his chest. I'd spent 8 months wondering who them was, who he'd been afraid of, what he'd found. Now I knew, and tomorrow I'd stand in front of 12 of the most powerful criminals in the city and tell them the truth. Tell them that Damon Reyes, one of their own, had murdered an innocent man to cover his crimes. I'd either get justice for Lucas, or I'd end up dead in an alley just like him. There was no middle ground. But what I didn't know was that Lucas had left behind one final piece of evidence, and it was about to surface at exactly the right moment. The warehouse was on the far south side, surrounded by empty lots and chain-link fences topped with razor wire. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry, and bodies could disappear without anyone asking questions. The kind of place that looked abandoned but was probably worth millions in hidden assets. Cole parked in the shadows between 2 other black SUVs, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in silence. Adam was already there, leaning against his vehicle with the casual posture of someone who'd done this 100 times. 2 other men I didn't recognize flanked him. Security, probably. Everyone was armed. Everyone was watching. Stay close to me, Cole said, his voice quiet but intense. Don't speak unless Franklin addresses you directly. Don't make eye contact with Damon. And no matter what happens, no matter what they say, stay calm. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He reached across the console and touched my hand. Just briefly, just enough to ground me. You can do this, he said. You're stronger than you think. I wanted to believe him. We entered through a side door that opened onto a narrow hallway lined with industrial lighting. The walls were concrete, the floor polished cement. Everything echoed. Footsteps, breathing, the rustle of clothing. Security checkpoint ahead, exactly where Adam had said it would be. 2 men in suits ran metal detectors over both of us. Thorough, professional. They found nothing because we'd brought nothing. Cole had even made me leave my phone at the safe house. Clear, one of them said, stepping aside. The hallway opened into a large space that had once been a meatpacking floor. High ceilings with exposed ductwork, windows covered with blackout material. And in the center, exactly as Adam had described, a long table with 12 chairs arranged in a semicircle. Each chair was occupied. 12 faces turned toward us as we entered. 12 pairs of eyes evaluating, measuring, judging. The weight of their attention was physical, pressure against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Franklin Daly sat at the center, an older man with silver hair and a face like carved granite. Probably 70, maybe older, but with the kind of presence that made age irrelevant. He wore a three-piece suit that looked like it had been made for his grandfather and maintained ever since. Old money, old power, old rules. "Mr. Maddox," Franklin said, his voice carrying easily through the space. Deep, authoritative, the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You called this meeting. Explain." Cole's voice was steady, showing no sign of the tension I could feel radiating from him. "I'm bringing formal charges against Damon Reyes. 3 counts. Unauthorized financial transfers totaling approximately $8 million over 2 years, unauthorized negotiations with the Sinaloa cartel in violation of territorial agreements, and first-degree murder of Lucas Hart." A murmur ran through the council like wind through trees. Some faces showed surprise. Some showed calculation. A few, including the man Adam had identified as Marcus Torino, showed barely contained anger. The door opened. Damon entered. He looked exactly as he had upstairs 3 nights ago. Controlled, emotionless, untouchable. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect mask. His eyes found mine, and something cold moved through them. Not anger. Something worse. Dismissal. Like I was already dead and just didn't know it yet. "This is absurd," Damon said calmly, moving to stand beside Marcus. "Cole's been trying to undermine me for months because I questioned some of his decisions. This is a witch hunt, not justice." "Sit down," Franklin ordered, his tone brooking no argument. Damon sat, but his eyes never left mine. Franklin turned his attention to me, and I felt the full weight of his scrutiny. "And you are?" "Sophia Hart." My voice came out steadier than I expected. Stronger. "And what is your connection to this matter?" I forced my voice to remain level, to stay calm, to remember everything Adam had taught me. "Damon Reyes killed my brother." The room went completely silent. "That's a serious accusation," Franklin said. His expression revealed nothing, not doubt, not belief, just careful neutrality. "Do you have proof?" I pulled out my phone, the one Adam had given me that morning, loaded with just the surveillance photo, and held it up. My hands didn't shake. "This was taken the night my brother died. The man in the image is Riley Cortez. He has a distinctive scar from jaw to ear on the left side of his face." I paused. 3 nights ago, I was sent upstairs to deliver bourbon to a restricted meeting. Riley Cortez was in that room, being interrogated by Damon Reyes. "Coincidence," Damon said flatly. "Riley works for the organization. Sophia is a bartender who sees him at the club. It proves nothing." "Riley was in the alley where my brother died," I continued, ignoring him the way Adam had instructed. "Don't engage. Don't react. Just present the facts." "My brother Lucas worked as an accountant for Midwest Logistics. 3 days before he died, he called me. He told me he'd found something. Financial discrepancies. Money being moved through shell companies. He said he was going to tell someone he trusted." I looked directly at the council now, not at Damon. Lucas discovered that Damon was stealing millions from the organization. When Lucas found the proof, Damon had him killed to keep him quiet. Riley Cortez was the one who pulled the trigger. "Can you prove that?" Marcus Torino demanded, his voice sharp. Aggressive. Exactly what Adam had warned me about. "Can you prove any connection between Riley being in that alley and Damon ordering your brother's death?" "I can prove Riley was there," I said, keeping my voice level. "I can prove he works for Damon. I can prove my brother found financial irregularities. And I can prove that 3 nights ago, Riley was being interrogated about money that had gone missing." "Interrogated about money he stole," Damon interjected smoothly. "Riley's been skimming for months. That's why he was being questioned." This woman is making connections that don't exist because she's desperate for someone to blame for her brother's death. "Then explain the timeline," Cole said, his voice cutting through the room. He handed Franklin a thick folder. "These are financial records spanning 2 years. They show systematic transfers from organizational accounts to offshore holdings. The shell companies trace back to Damon through 3 layers of separation." Franklin opened the folder, his expression unchanging as he reviewed the documents. "They also show," Cole continued, "that Lucas Hart accessed these same files 3 days before his death. He downloaded copies, sent them to an external email address we've since traced. He was gathering evidence. Evidence of Riley's theft," Damon said, "which Riley then killed him for." "I had nothing to do with it." "Then why was Riley at your meeting 3 nights ago?" I asked, the question bursting out before I could stop it. "If he was stealing from you, if he'd murdered someone to cover it up, why would you be interrogating him instead of eliminating him?" Silence. Damon's expression flickered, just for a second, and I saw something beneath the mask. Calculation. The quick thinking of someone trying to rewrite a story that was falling apart. If this corrupt system, where men like Damon buy their way out of murder while families like mine drown in debt from trying to save the people they killed, makes your blood boil, subscribe. Because what happens next will either prove justice can exist in a broken world, or confirm everything cynical you've ever believed about power. "I was trying to understand the extent of his betrayal," Damon said smoothly. "To recover what he'd stolen. To find out if he'd told anyone else." "You were trying to find out if he'd talked," Cole corrected. "Because you knew Lucas had copied those files. You knew evidence existed somewhere, and you were trying to find it before anyone else did." Franklin raised a hand, silencing them both. He continued reading through the folder, page by page, his expression giving nothing away. The room waited. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Franklin looked up. "Damon Reyes," he said, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. "These records require investigation. The timeline Miss Hart presents is consistent with the evidence. The connections, while not conclusive, are compelling." Relief started to flood through me. But Franklin wasn't finished. "However," he continued, and my stomach dropped, "Miss Hart's testimony is circumstantial. She didn't witness the murder. She didn't hear Damon order it. She has suspicions and correlations, but not proof." "That's because Damon makes sure there's never proof," I said, the words coming out harder than I intended. Desperate. "That's how men like him operate. They kill and steal and destroy, and they make sure nothing ever traces back to them. They make sure people like my brother, people who try to do the right thing, end up dead in alleys with their murders labeled as random crimes." My voice cracked on the last words, and I hated it. Hated showing weakness. But I couldn't stop. "Lucas was 28 years old," I continued. "He was an accountant. He liked crossword puzzles and bad action movies. He helped me through college. He drove me to job interviews. He was the best person I knew, and he died because he found out the truth. Because he believed justice mattered. Because he trusted the wrong person." I looked directly at Damon now, ignoring Adam's warning. "You took everything from me. My brother, my future, my faith that truth mattered. And you did it because you wanted money. Because you couldn't be satisfied with what you had. Because human life meant nothing compared to your ambition. The room was silent. Then Franklin spoke. Your grief is understandable, Miss Hart. Your desire for justice is admirable. But grief is not evidence. Suspicion is not proof. He looked at Cole. However, the financial records are troubling, as is the timeline. I'm ordering an official investigation. By whom? Marcus demanded. Cole's obviously biased. He's been trying to remove Damon for months. By a neutral party, Franklin said. I'll appoint investigators from outside the organization. They'll have full access to all financial records, all communications, all personnel. They'll interview everyone involved, including Riley Cortez. Riley is missing, Damon said smoothly. Too smoothly. He ran after the interrogation. We've been looking for him. Of course he was missing. Of course Damon had made sure the only witness who could corroborate my story had disappeared. Then you'll find him, Franklin said. You have 72 hours. If you can't produce Riley Cortez for questioning, I'll consider that evidence of wrongdoing. He turned his attention to me. Miss Hart, you'll remain under Cole Maddox's protection during the investigation. If anything happens to you, anything at all, Damon will be held responsible. This is insane, Marcus protested. You're taking the word of a grieving bartender over a loyal lieutenant based on circumstantial evidence and financial records that could have dozens of explanations. I'm following protocol, Franklin said coldly. Something we've instituted precisely to prevent the kind of internal warfare that would result from unsubstantiated accusations. The investigation will proceed. If Damon is innocent, it will exonerate him. If he's guilty, he'll answer for his crimes. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. We reconvene in 72 hours. He looked at Damon. You're suspended pending investigation. Surrender your weapons and your organizational access. You'll be confined to your residence under surveillance. Damon's face remained impassive, but his eyes promised murder. This isn't over, he said quietly, looking directly at me. No, Cole agreed, stepping between us. It's not. What none of us knew. Riley Cortez was already dead, and the evidence Lucas had hidden was about to surface in the last place anyone expected. The first 24 hours crawled by like years. Cole took me back to the safe house, but this time Adam stayed with us. Additional security appeared, men I didn't know but who moved with military precision, checking sightlines and exits, establishing perimeters. The safe house that had felt like refuge now felt like a bunker. They'll come for you, Adam said bluntly that first night. Damon won't wait for the investigation. He can't afford to. If Riley talks, if investigators find anything, he's finished. His only move is to eliminate you and claim you are lying. So what do I do? I asked. You stay alive, Cole said from the doorway. He'd been on the phone for 2 hours, coordinating something I wasn't privy to. And you trust that we'll find Riley before Damon's people do. And if you don't? His jaw tightened. We will. But he didn't sound certain, and that terrified me more than anything. The second day brought news. Bad news. Adam burst into the safe house at dawn, his expression grim. Riley's dead, he said without preamble. Body found in a shipping container at the port. Single gunshot to the head. Professional. My stomach dropped. When? Medical examiner estimates 12 to 16 hours ago, right after the council meeting. Adam looked at Cole. Damon moved fast. Probably had someone waiting nearby in case things went wrong. So we have no witness, I said numbly. No one who can corroborate what I saw. We have the financial records, Cole said, but his voice lacked conviction. And we have your testimony, which Franklin called circumstantial. I sank into a chair, the weight of everything crushing down on me. Without Riley, I have nothing. It's my word against Damon's. And who's the council going to believe? A bartender or one of their own? Cole crouched in front of me, forcing me to meet his eyes. They'll believe the truth, he said, because we're going to give them evidence they can't ignore. What evidence? Riley's dead. The files show financial movement, but not murder. I saw him in a room, but I didn't see him in the alley. I have a surveillance photo that doesn't show faces clearly enough to hold up under scrutiny. I have nothing. You have me, Cole said quietly, and I'm not letting Damon win. The third day brought the breakthrough we needed, or the disaster. I still wasn't sure which. Adam returned at noon with a laptop. Forensic accountant finished the deep dive, he said, setting up the computer on the dining table. You need to see this. Cole and I gathered around as Adam pulled up a series of spreadsheets. Damon wasn't just stealing, Adam explained. He was running a parallel operation. Shell companies, offshore accounts, cartel connections. It's all here. But here's the interesting part. He clicked to another screen. Lucas Hart didn't just discover the theft. He documented it. Downloaded files, took screenshots, created a paper trail. We knew that, Cole said. What we didn't know, Adam continued, is that he sent everything to a secure server. Cloud storage with an automated release. If Lucas didn't log in every 72 hours, the files would automatically send to a preset list of recipients. My heart stopped. What recipients? The FBI, the Chicago PD, the IRS, and a lawyer named Jennifer Morrison at Bergman & Associates. He created a dead man's switch, Cole breathed. And it triggered 3 days after his death, Adam confirmed. The files went out. But here's where it gets complicated. Damon had people monitoring for this. They intercepted most of the messages, buried the investigation before it started, paid off the right people, made it all disappear. Most? I asked. Not all? Adam smiled grimly. Jennifer Morrison never got the email because she'd changed firms, but she had an automated forward set up to her new address. The files sat in an unmonitored inbox for 8 months. Until? Cole prompted. Until I contacted her yesterday and explained the situation. Adam pulled up an email. She's willing to testify, to provide the files, to confirm that Lucas Hart sent them the day before he died with a note saying if anything happened to him, it was because of what he'd discovered. Hope surged through me like electricity. That's evidence, I said. Real evidence. Not just my word or suspicions. Lucas's own documentation. It's enough to force a full criminal investigation, Cole agreed. Not just internal counsel review. Federal investigation into both the theft and the murder. Which means Damon's finished, Adam said. Even if the council doesn't act, the FBI will. So what do we do? I asked. Cole checked his watch. The council reconvenes in 4 hours. We present this evidence. We force them to act. He looked at me. Are you ready? I thought about Lucas. About his dead man's switch, his careful documentation, his belief that truth mattered, even if it cost him his life. About the fact that he'd died trying to expose this, and his evidence had been sitting in an inbox for 8 months while I'd worked in the same building as his killer, serving him drinks and never knowing. I'm ready, I said. But Damon had one final move, and it was about to force everyone in that warehouse to choose between survival and justice. The warehouse felt different this time, colder, more dangerous. Like something fundamental had shifted in the 72 hours since the last meeting. All 12 council members were present, but this time, additional people filled the space. FBI agents in suits, forensic accountants, a stenographer recording everything. This wasn't just a council meeting anymore. This was the beginning of something bigger. Damon sat in the same chair, but he looked different. Diminished somehow. His mask of control showing cracks. He knew something had changed. He just didn't know what yet. Franklin called the meeting to order with a single, sharp rap of his gavel. We reconvened to hear additional testimony and evidence regarding charges against Damon Reyes. He looked at Cole. I understand you have new information. We do. Cole nodded to Adam, who connected his laptop to a projector. Lucas's files appeared on the wall. Spreadsheets, transaction records, screenshots of offshore accounts. A paper trail so detailed and damning that even I, who'd known the truth, felt shocked by the scope of it. Lucas Hart created this documentation 3 days before his death, Cole explained. He sent it to multiple recipients via automated dead man's switch. These files show systematic theft of $8.3 million over 27 months. They show unauthorized deals with Hector Salazar of the Sinaloa cartel. And they show Damon Reyes' direct involvement in every transaction. He clicked to the next slide. They also show that Lucas confronted Damon about the theft. There's an email exchange dated 3 days before Lucas's death. Lucas gives Damon a chance to return the money and come clean. Damon's response is a meeting request. The meeting was set for the night Lucas died. The room was silent. Riley Cortez was Damon's personal security, Cole continued. He accompanied Damon to that meeting. He was there when Lucas Hart died, and 3 nights ago, when Sophia Hart recognized Riley and the situation became dangerous, Damon eliminated him to prevent him from talking. This is fabricated, Damon said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. These files could have been created by anyone. Could have been altered. Could have been. They were verified by a federal forensic accountant. One of the FBI agents interjected. The metadata is authentic. The transactions are real. And the email exchange is pulled directly from your account, Mr. Reyes. Damon's face went pale. Franklin studied the projected files for a long moment. Then he said, Miss Hart, please step forward. I did. My legs somehow steady even though my heart was racing. 3 nights ago, you testified that you witnessed Riley Cortez in a restricted meeting, Franklin said. You testified that he bore a distinctive scar matching a surveillance photo from the night of your brother's death. Do you stand by that testimony? Yes, I said clearly. Every word. And you believed then, as you believe now, that Damon Reyes ordered your brother's murder? Yes, because Lucas discovered Damon's theft and Damon needed to silence him. Because Riley Cortez worked for Damon and was in the alley where Lucas died. Because everything Lucas documented in these files gave Damon motive, means, and opportunity. Franklin turned to Damon. Do you wish to respond to these charges? Damon stood slowly. I watched something behind his eyes change, calculation giving way to desperation. A cornered animal realizing there was no way out. Lucas Hart was stealing, Damon said. He created these files to cover his own theft. When I discovered it, he threatened to frame me. I arranged to meet him to discuss it, to give him a chance to return the money. But he attacked me. Riley defended me. It was self-defense. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost doubted myself. Then Cole played the final card. Is that your statement? He asked Damon. Yes. Then explain this. Adam pulled up a recording. Audio only, but clear. Damon's voice filled the warehouse. Riley, we have a problem. Lucas Hart found the accounts. He's got copies. We need to handle this tonight before he talks. Another voice, Riley's. How do you want me to handle it? Damon. Make it look like a robbery. Nothing that traces back. Clean. Riley. Understood. Where? Damon. I'll text you the location. Make sure his phone disappears. And Riley, no witnesses. The recording stopped. Damon stood frozen, his face ashen. That recording, Cole said, was made by Lucas Hart's phone. He'd started recording conversations after he discovered the theft, trying to gather evidence. He was wearing a wire the night he died. The recording was uploaded to his cloud storage along with everything else. That's not my voice, Damon said desperately. It's fabricated, altered, AI. It's been authenticated by voice analysis, the FBI agent interrupted. That's your voice, Mr. Reyes. Giving explicit orders to murder Lucas Hart. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Franklin stood. Damon Reyes, he said, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. You are hereby stripped of all rank and position. Your assets are seized, and you are remanded to federal custody to face charges of first-degree murder, racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. 2 FBI agents moved forward, pulling out handcuffs. Damon's mask finally shattered completely. You can't do this, he snarled, looking at Marcus, at the other council members. I've served this organization for 15 years. I've earned my position. You've betrayed everything this organization stands for, Franklin said coldly. You've stolen from your own people, murdered an innocent man, eliminated witnesses, and you've brought federal attention down on all of us. His voice hardened. You're done. As the agents cuffed him, Damon looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said. You think you've won? You've just signed your own death sentence. Someone will come for you. If not me, then... That's enough, one of the agents said, pulling him toward the door. I watched him go, feeling nothing like I'd expected. Not triumph, not relief, just exhaustion and grief, and the hollow feeling of knowing that justice, such as it was, couldn't bring Lucas back. Franklin turned to me. Miss Hart, he said, his voice gentler than before. On behalf of the council, I apologize. Your brother was an honorable man who died trying to do the right thing. That should never have happened, and we will ensure that his sacrifice is remembered. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. You're free to go, Franklin continued, and you'll be compensated for your loss. The money Damon stole will be recovered, and a portion will be set aside for you. It won't replace your brother, but it will clear your debts and give you a fresh start. Thank you, I managed. Cole touched my arm gently. Come on, he said quietly. Let's get you out of here. The medical debt disappeared first. One morning I woke up to a voicemail from the collections agency saying my account had been paid in full. $47,000 gone. Just like that. Then came the compensation. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe. I quit my job at the Obsidian Club. Grant understood. Even hugged me goodbye, which surprised us both. Evan and Michael invited me to dinner again. This time I said yes. The FBI investigation led to 19 arrests. The organization fractured, restructured, emerged different. Cole remained, but changed too. More careful, more aware of the dangers of unchecked power. We stayed in touch. Careful at first, then more open. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long conversations that lasted until dawn. Neither of us rushed it. Neither of us tried to define it. We just let it be what it needed to be. 3 months after Damon's arrest, Cole found me on the roof of my new apartment building. A safe neighborhood in Logan Square, far from River North and the memories that came with it. How are you? He asked, standing beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Different, I said honestly. Not better exactly. Just different. Good different or bad different? I thought about it. Thought about Lucas and the diary and the night everything changed. about grief that didn't disappear but learned to coexist with hope. I don't know yet, I said. Ask me in another 3 months. He smiled. I can do that. We stood in silence, watching the sun set over Chicago. The city spread out below us. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of secrets. Some dark, some light, all interconnected in ways we'd never fully understand. I got a job offer, I said finally. Teaching position at Northwestern. Creative writing. Cole turned to me, surprised. That's incredible. Are you going to take it? I think so. It feels right. Using my writing for something other than grief. Helping other people find their words. I paused. Lucas would have liked that. He would have, Cole agreed. He'd be proud of you. Would he? The question came out smaller than I intended, more uncertain. Cole turned fully toward me. Sophia, you took down one of the most dangerous men in the city. You exposed corruption that had been hidden for years. You got justice for your brother when the entire system failed him. You survived things that would have broken most people. He touched my face gently. Yes, he'd be proud. My eyes burned with tears I'd been holding back for 3 months. I miss him, I whispered. I know. Cole pulled me into his arms, and I let myself lean into him. Let myself take comfort from someone who understood grief and justice, and the complicated space between. What about you? I asked after a moment. What happens now? I'm restructuring, he said. Bringing in oversight, checks and balances, making sure what happened with Damon can't happen again. He paused. It's not redemption, but it's a start. It is, I agreed. We stood there as the light faded and the city lights began to glow. Two people brought together by violence and grief, trying to figure out how to build something honest from the wreckage. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't even really an ending at all. But it was real, and it was ours. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later, on the anniversary of Lucas's death, I published an article. Not about the mafia or the trial or the investigation. About Lucas himself. About the man he'd been. About his crossword puzzles and bad action movies and the way he'd believed that truth mattered even when it was dangerous. About the cost of doing the right thing. And the value of it. The article went viral, sparked conversations about whistleblower protections and financial oversight, and the price that ordinary people pay when they stand up to corruption. Lucas's story mattered, not because of how he died, but because of how he lived. And I made sure the world knew it. Cole sent me flowers when the article published. The card read, "He'd be proud. So am I." See, I kept the card, put it in a drawer with my diary, the one Lucas had given me, the one that had changed everything. Sometimes I still wrote in it, but now I wrote about hope alongside grief, about healing alongside loss, about the slow, difficult process of learning to live again after everything falls apart. I wrote about Cole, too, about trust that built slowly, about connection forged in crisis, about learning that not all dangerous men were villains, that sometimes they were just people trying to do better with the tools they'd been given. I wrote about the future, uncertain, complicated, but mine to shape. And I wrote about Lucas, always about Lucas, because forgetting him would mean he died for nothing, and remembering him meant keeping alive everything he'd believed in. Justice, truth, courage, the things that mattered, the things worth dying for, the things worth living for. If you felt something while watching this story, if Sophia's fight against a system designed to protect men like Damon resonated with you, please subscribe. That's how I know these stories mean something to you. Your support keeps this world of emotions alive, and it tells me you believe truth still matters, even when it costs everything.